Lorena had been on Earth for only 3 days. She was a young alien woman from the planet Valora, tall, graceful, with silver blue skin and large, gentle eyes. Back on her world, she worked in childcare centers, looking after small alien cubs, who listened, behaved, and never made trouble. So when she signed up for the Earth Cultural Exchange babysitting program, she thought it would be simple, after all. How different could human children really be? The hovercar stopped outside a small white house in a quiet human neighborhood. Birds were singing. Sunlight touched the green grass, and everything looked peaceful. Lorena stepped out, holding a small bag with her training tools. She had been told she would babysit an 8-year-old boy named Max for a few hours while his parents went to a meeting. She imagined reading him a story, maybe helping him with some simple Earth games. And then he would quietly take a nap. It sounded almost relaxing. The door opened, and Max's mother greeted her with a warm smile. "Thank you for coming, Lorena. Max can be a little energetic, but I'm sure you'll do fine," she said. Lorena gave a polite nod, confident in her abilities. Then Max appeared. He had messy brown hair, bright green eyes, and a small smile that seemed too innocent. "Hi," he said, his tone cheerful, but there was something in his eyes, a spark, a hidden energy that made Lorena pause. The parents quickly left after giving her instructions. No sweets after 6, no climbing the furniture, and bedtime stories before 8. Max's father said before waving goodbye. The door closed, and Lorena turned to Max. "So, Max, what would you like to do?" she asked kindly. Max grinned. "Oh, I have some ideas." Lorena followed him into the living room, expecting to see toys or books. But before she could ask anything, Max vanished. 1 second he was standing in front of her. The next, gone. Lorena froze, her alien senses scanning the room. She didn't detect any danger. But where had he gone? Then a voice came from above her head. "Hey, you're slow." She looked up and almost dropped her bag. Max was hanging upside down from the ceiling, holding on to some thin rope she hadn't noticed before. "Max, that's dangerous. Come down right now," she ordered. He laughed and flipped to the floor in one quick move. "How did you even get up there?" she demanded. Max just shrugged. Trade secret. Lorena tried to remain calm. On Valora, children respected authority. But here, Max seemed to be testing her. She decided to guide his energy into something safe. "All right, let's play." "Game," she suggested. Max's grin grew wider. "Okay, but my rules." That was the first mistake. The next hour became a whirlwind. Max challenged her to a find me if you can game, disappearing into rooms, crawling under furniture, and even somehow appearing outside in the backyard without opening any doors. Every time she thought she had caught him, he slipped away, leaving behind strange human gadgets, small, noisy devices that made clicking sounds or sprayed harmless foam. Lorena had no idea what half of them did. She started to feel unsettled. On her homeworld, she was always in control, always the one teaching and guiding. But here, she was the one running after a small human who seemed to know exactly how to make her confused. Yet, there was something about Max's smile. It wasn't mean, it wasn't cruel, it was pure mischief. It was as if he was testing her limits, seeing how far he could push before she gave up. Finally, she cornered him in the kitchen. He stood by the counter, hands behind his back, looking suspiciously calm. "What's behind your back, Max?" she asked slowly. He pulled out a small round object and set it on the counter. "I'm making something for you," he said with a mysterious tone before she could ask. He pressed a button on the object, and suddenly colorful foam started spilling out, growing, spreading, and filling the counter. It smelled sweet, but strange, like sugar mixed with alien spices. "What is this?" she exclaimed. "Space candy," Max said proudly. Lorena didn't know whether to laugh or to call for help. The foam kept growing until she quickly grabbed a bowl to contain it. Max watched with an amused expression. "You're fun," he said casually, as if this was all normal. Lorena sighed, realizing this night was going to be much longer than she expected. But somewhere deep inside, she felt a spark of curiosity. What other surprises did this human child have, and why, despite the chaos? Did she feel like she might actually enjoy finding out? Lorena had barely finished cleaning the strange foam from the kitchen counter when she realized Max was gone again. She turned slowly, scanning the doorway, but there was nothing but silence. The house felt too quiet, and she knew that with Max, quiet never meant peace. It meant trouble. She stepped into the hallway and froze when a shadow moved across the wall. It darted toward the stairs, quick and playful, and she followed without a second thought. At the top of the stairs, she found the hallway dark. She hadn't noticed any lights being switched off, yet every bulb was dim, casting long, soft shadows. Her alien eyes adjusted quickly, and there, at the far end, she saw Max standing perfectly. Still, his eyes glowed faintly in the gloom, and in his hands was a small device she didn't recognize. "What's that?" she asked, keeping her voice calm. Max tilted his head and smiled. "Something I built. Wanna see?" Without waiting for an answer, he pressed a button. The air around them shimmered like water, and the floor seemed to shift under her feet. For a moment, she thought the gravity in the hallway had failed, just like in space stations when systems malfunction. She stumbled forward, trying to keep her balance. Max, meanwhile, was walking as if nothing had changed. "It's my gravity flipper," he announced. "It only works in small spaces, but it's fun." Lorena's mind raced, wondering how an 8-year-old human had invented something even Valorant engineers would find impressive. "Max, turn it off," she ordered firmly, but Max shook his head. "Not yet. You haven't tried walking on the ceiling?" Before she could protest, the force under her feet shifted again, and her body was gently pulled upward until her hair brushed against what used to be the ceiling. She gasped, her hands gripping the air as if that would help. Max laughed, running along the upside-down hallway as if it was the most natural thing in the world. The strange game lasted only a minute before Max pressed the button again, dropping them both back onto the floor. Lorena's knees hit the carpet with a soft thud. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "You could have hurt yourself," she said sharply, but Max's grin never faded. "But I didn't, that's the point." He slipped the device into his pocket and darted into another room before she could stop him. She followed quickly, only to find herself in what looked like a workshop. The room was filled with wires, batteries, and pieces of broken toys, but also with tools she had never seen before. Max was crouched by a low table, his fingers busy connecting wires. "Where did you get all of this?" she asked. Max didn't look up. "I collect things. People throw away stuff they think is useless, but I fix them, or make them better." Lorena had to admit she was impressed. On her world, children his age were still learning basic logic. Puzzles Max, however, was building devices that bent gravity. "You know," Max said suddenly, looking at her with a sly smile, "you're not like the other babysitters. They give up after an hour, but you're still here." She couldn't tell if it was a compliment or a challenge, and before she could respond, he grabbed another small object and held it out to her. "Catch!" She caught it automatically, but the moment her fingers closed around it, the device began to hum. A light flickered from its core, and tiny holographic images spun around her head. Stars, planets, glowing shapes she didn't recognize. Her breath caught as she realized these weren't random. They were accurate star maps, including systems she knew from her homeworld but had never mentioned to anyone. "Where did you get these coordinates?" she asked quietly. Max shrugged. "I just find things." Something about his tone made her uneasy. There was no way a human child should know these maps, let alone build a projector to display them. She crouched down to his level, searching his face for some sign of a lie, but he only looked curious, almost daring her to keep asking questions. A sudden noise from downstairs broke the moment, a loud clattering sound. Lorena stood up quickly. "Stay here," she ordered, but Max was already at the door, moving faster than she could. They both rushed to the living room, where a cold breeze was blowing through an open window. The curtains swayed like slow-moving ghosts. Lorena's eyes narrowed. That window had been closed earlier. Max stepped closer, peering outside. "Wasn't me this time," he said softly. There was something in his voice, a rare seriousness that made Lorena's skin prickle. She joined him at the window and looked out into the yard. But the shadows under the trees were too deep to see clearly. Then, in the far corner, something moved. It wasn't human, and it wasn't small. Lorena felt the hairs on the back of her neck rise. Max glanced at her, and for the first time since they'd met, there was no mischief in his expression, only excitement mixed with a spark of danger. "Want to see something even better?" he whispered before she could stop him. He was already heading for the back door. The night air outside was cool, carrying the scent of damp grass and something sharper. Something Lorena couldn't name. Max moved quickly across the yard, his small frame slipping between the moonlit patches and the shadows without hesitation. Lorena followed every instinct telling her this was a mistake, yet she couldn't let him go alone. They reached the far corner of the yard, where an old wooden fence leaned slightly. Beyond it was the dark outline of the shed Max had warned her about earlier. The boards were worn, the metal lock rusted, but the ground around it was disturbed, as if something had been moving there recently. Max crouched low, pressing his ear to the wood. Lorena whispered his name, urging him back, but he only raised a finger to his lips. There was a faint scratching sound from inside, slow and deliberate, like claws dragging against the floor. Lorena's stomach tightened. Her mind raced through all the creatures she knew from Valora, but none fit the rhythm of that sound. Max pulled a small flashlight from his pocket, the beam slicing through the dark as he aimed it at a crack in the shed wall. Lorena caught a glimpse of something pale and moving, not fur, not scales, but smooth, shifting muscle. Before she could stop him, Max tugged on the lock, and it gave way with a metallic snap. The shed door creaked open, and a strange smell spilled out, metallic and sour. The creature inside shifted, and two reflective eyes caught the light. Lorena stepped forward quickly, placing herself between Max and the shadow. "Stay behind me," she said firmly. But Max's eyes were wide with fascination rather than fear. The thing moved into the moonlight, revealing a body low to the ground, skin like wet stone, and a mouth lined with too many teeth. Lorena recognized it instantly now. A Vascan burrower, a pest species from her own homeworld. Dangerous not because of its size, but because of its speed and bite. It should never have been on Earth. How did it get here? She muttered, but Max didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his backpack and pulled out a strange contraption made of wires, a coil, and what looked like part of an old toaster. "I built this for catching raccoons," he whispered. "Think it'll work on that thing?" Lorena's eyes widened. "Max, no," the creature hissed, the sound sharp enough to make the air feel colder. Then it lunged, faster than Lorena expected. She stepped to intercept, but Max had already thrown his device onto the ground. In front of it, a burst of bright light and a snapping sound filled the air. The burrower froze mid-step, its body shuddering as arcs of electricity danced over its skin. It wasn't enough to knock it out, but it slowed the creature just long enough for Lorena to grab Max and pull him back. They stumbled toward the house, but the burrower shook off the shock and began to follow. Low and silent, Max's breathing was quick, but his eyes were still bright with that same mix of thrill and challenge. "Told you I could show you something better," he said breathlessly. Lorena wanted to scold him, but the pounding of her own heart made the words stick in her throat. When they reached the back porch, Lorena turned, expecting to see the creature right behind them, but it had stopped at the edge of the yard. Its head tilted, as if studying them. Then, with a low growl, it slipped back toward the shed, disappearing. Into the shadows, Max leaned against the porch railing, still catching his breath. "It'll be back," he said simply, as if this was just another part of his night's plans. Lorena stared at him, unsure whether to feel anger, confusion, or a strange kind of respect. "You knew it was here," she said quietly. Max gave a small shrug. "I heard it a few nights ago. No one believed me." Inside the house, the warmth felt strange after the cold tension outside. Lorena locked the doors and windows, her mind already working through what she would need to do if the burrower returned. Max sat at the kitchen table, fiddling with another gadget. "You're not scared of it, are you?" he asked. Lorena looked at him for a long moment before answering. "I'm not scared for me." Max grinned at that, a mischievous edge back in his eyes. "Then you'll be fine. We just have to outsmart it." She realized then that for all his troublemaking, Max wasn't just playing games. He was preparing, and whatever came next. She wasn't sure if she was protecting him or if they were protecting each other. The night had settled into a heavy stillness, the kind that made every sound feel louder than it should. Lorena sat near the living room window, her alien senses stretched to the edge of the yard. Max was in the corner, working on something with bits of wire, nails, and what looked like part of a broken lamp. She had told him to stay away from the shed, but she could tell his mind was still out there, waiting for the burrower to make its next move. A sudden metallic thud broke the quiet. Both of them froze. Max looked up from his project, and Lorena's gaze snapped toward the back door. The sound came again, sharper, followed by a scraping noise against the wall. It wasn't trying to be quiet anymore. "It's here," Max whispered. Lorena didn't waste time arguing. She got up, scanning the shadows beyond the glass, and caught a glimpse of the creature's glistening body as it slithered along the siding. Max pushed the small device across the floor toward her. "This is ready. Put it near the door." Lorena glanced at it, a box with wires sticking out, humming faintly. "What will it do?" she asked. "Shock it just enough to stun it," he replied, his voice calm but quick. Lorena knew it was a risk, but so was waiting. She placed the device just inside the threshold, crouching low. The burrower moved into view, its pale skin catching the faint porch light. Its eyes locked on her. Unblinking, it stepped closer, claws clicking softly against the wooden boards. Lorena felt her pulse match the rhythm of those steps. It crossed the doorway's shadow, and Max hit a small remote in his hand. The device flared with a blinding flash and a sharp crack. The creature convulsed, letting out a screech that rattled the window glass. It tried to retreat, but the shock had stiffened its movements. Lorena lunged forward, using a chair to push it back toward the doorframe where the current could hold it longer. Max grabbed a coil of rope, not alien tech, just ordinary human rope, and began tying its legs in quick loops. For a moment, it seemed like they might succeed, but the burrower's strength surged and the rope snapped like thread. It twisted violently, sending the chair flying from Lorena's hands. She stumbled back as it bolted through the kitchen, moving far faster than its size should allow. Max ran after it without hesitation. Lorena swore under her breath and followed. The creature darted into the hallway, knocking over a small table, photographs scattering across the floor. Max tried to block its path toward the stairs, but it leaped over him with a fluid, terrifying grace by the time they reached the top. The burrower had vanished into one of the rooms. The hallway was silent again, and the open doors were like dark mouths waiting. Lorena's chest rose and fell with each breath. She glanced at Max, whose expression was sharper now. No mischief in his eyes, just focus. It's cornered itself, he said quietly. That means we can trap it. She didn't ask how he knew. She simply followed him into the dark. They moved together into the farthest room, Max holding a flashlight low to the ground. The beam caught a shimmer of pale skin under the bed. The burrower's body tensed, ready to strike. Lorena stepped between it and Max. But instead of attacking, it slithered backward right toward the open window. The night outside was darker here, and the forest beyond was waiting. Max dropped his flashlight into her hand and pulled another gadget from his pocket. A small disc-shaped object. He rolled it across the floor, and it stopped just beneath the bed. There was a soft click, followed by a pulsing light. The burrower hissed, recoiling. The light grew brighter, and Lorena could feel the faint vibration in the air. Frequency disruptor. Max whispered, hurts its hearing, keeps it still. The creature writhed, pressing itself against the wall. Lorena didn't wait. She grabbed the edge of the bed and shoved it aside. The burrower tried to dart past her, but Max kicked the door shut, trapping it inside. They stood there, breathing hard. The thing's body shivering against the corner. The disruptor's light kept it pinned. For the first time, Lorena saw something in Max's face she hadn't noticed before. Not just cleverness, but a strange, quiet pride. They had done it. Together, alien and human, babysitter and child. She didn't say it out loud, but she knew this wasn't over. The burrower would be moved, and the mystery of how it got here would have to be solved. Still, as they stood there in the dim room, the tension easing just slightly. Max grinned again. That familiar spark returning. Told you, I'm not just trouble, he said. She shook her head, almost smiling despite herself. No, she admitted, you're worse. Morning light spilled into the living room, soft and golden. As if the night's danger had been nothing but a bad dream, Lorena sat at the table, sipping a cup of warm earth tea, her eyes drifting again and again to the locked closet in the hallway. Behind that door, the burrower sat bound with a mix of rope, netting, and two of Max's strange devices humming faintly to keep it still. She had checked it 3 times already, and each time the creature had hissed but not moved. Max was on the floor, tinkering with another project. His tongue caught between his teeth in concentration. If anyone walked in right now, they'd think he was just a boy playing with broken toys. Lorena knew better. She had seen the way his mind worked, quick, sharp, and always planning. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway made Max glance up. Parents are home, he said. Lorena felt a small relief, but also a knot of worry. She wasn't sure how to explain what had happened without making herself sound like a careless guardian. Max didn't seem worried at all. In fact, his grin suggested he was looking forward to something. The front door opened, and his parents stepped in, smiling. Everything all right? His mother asked. Lorena forced a polite nod. Yes, everything was. Eventful but fine. Max piped up before she could say more. We made space candy. His mother laughed, assuming it was just a harmless game. But as they set their bags down, Lorena noticed Max's father paused near the window, his eyes narrowing slightly. Did you hear that? He asked. Everyone went still. From somewhere beyond the house came a faint metallic clink. Rhythmic, deliberate. Max's grin widened almost imperceptibly. Guess it followed us, he murmured under his breath. Too quiet for his parents, too. Here, Lorena's gaze snapped to him. What do you mean it followed us? She whispered sharply, but Max only tilted his head toward the backyard. She didn't want to leave the parents in the dark, but something in Max's expression told her this was more complicated than one stray alien pest. She moved to the back door, her senses tuned, and there, just beyond the fence line, she caught sight of movement. Not the burrower, something taller, standing in the shadows. The figure didn't move closer, but she felt its gaze fixed on the house. Her skin prickled. Whoever it was, They were watching, waiting. Max came up beside her, holding a small pair of binoculars, not ours, he said simply. It's looking for the burrower, or maybe for me. Lorena turned to face him fully. Why would anyone be looking for you? His answer was a slow, almost playful smile. Because I took something that doesn't belong to them, before she could press him. The figure beyond the fence slipped away into the trees. Lorena's instincts screamed to follow, but Max grabbed her wrist. Don't. It's a trap. They never come alone. She realized then that Max wasn't just mischievous for fun. He was operating on some quiet mission of his own. One she knew nothing about. From the hallway came a sudden crash. Both of them turned sharply. The closet door was half open. The ropes scattered. The burrower was gone. And in its place was a folded piece of paper. Max stepped forward, picked it up, and read the single sentence written in sharp, uneven letters. Give back what you stole. Or next time, it won't be alone. Max looked up at her, and for once, his smile faded. Guess we don't have much time, he said. Lorena stared at him, 100 questions crowding her mind. But the only thing she managed to say was, Max, what did you steal? He slipped the note into his pocket, meeting her gaze with a spark of mischief that felt far more dangerous now, something worth keeping. Asterisk, the sun had dipped low, painting the sky with streaks of orange and purple, but inside the little house the tension was as thick as ever. Lorena and Max sat across from each other at the kitchen table. A strange mix of fear and determination hanging between them. Max pulled out a small, knowing cube from his pocket, careful not to let it catch too much light. This, Max said quietly, is what they want back. Lorena reached out to touch it, but he pulled it away gently. It's more than just a thing. It's a key, a power source for something much bigger than us. His eyes held a seriousness that didn't belong to an 8-year-old Lorena's. Mind raced. She had never imagined that babysitting a human child would lead her to hold a piece of alien technology so secret, so dangerous. Why do you have it? She asked, her voice steady but curious. Max hesitated, then shrugged. I found it near the old scrapyard, hidden inside a crate. I didn't know what it was at first, but then I realized it wasn't just junk. Outside, the night grew darker, the stars blinking awake, one by one. Lorena's senses detected movement beyond the window again. The hunters were coming, and this time, they wouldn't stop at warnings. Max stood, determination setting his jaw. We have to leave. They'll be here soon. And I don't want anyone else to get hurt. Lorena nodded, a fierce protectiveness rising inside her. She wasn't just an alien babysitter anymore. She was a guardian. And this mischievous human kid had just become the most important person in her life. Together, they packed a small bag with essentials. Max grabbing his gadgets and the glowing cube, Lorena securing the doors behind them. As they stepped out into the cool night air, a distant hum vibrated through the ground. Lights flickered across. The horizon ships were arriving, fast and silent. The chase had begun. And Max looked back once, meeting Lorena's eyes. Ready? He asked. She smiled, a mix of fear and hope, more than ever. They vanished into the shadows. Two unlikely allies against a universe that wanted the key and the kid. And in that moment, the babysitter understood that this mischievous human was not just a child to watch over. He was a force of nature, a puzzle, and maybe, just maybe, the reason she had come to Earth. Asterisk, the sky was a deep black canvas sprinkled with stars as Max and Lorena moved quietly through the thick forest. At the edge of town, their breaths came out in soft clouds, mingling with the cool night air. Behind them, the faint hum of alien engines grew louder. The hunters were closing in faster than either of them had hoped. Max's hand tightened around the glowing cube, its soft light pulsing like a heartbeat. "They want this," he whispered. "But they don't know what it really can do." Lorena glanced at him, admiration shining in her eyes. This small human child carried a secret that could change everything. Suddenly, from the shadows ahead, a squad of tall figures stepped into the clearing, their eyes glowing red, weapons raised and aimed. Lorena's heart pounded, but she stood firm beside Max. Ready? The hunters were silent but deadly. Their leader, larger and more menacing, stepped forward and spoke in a voice that was cold and sharp. "Return the key, child, and no harm will come to you or your guardian," he said, his gaze locked on Max's. But the boy didn't flinch. Instead, Max pressed a button on the cube, and the light exploded into a bright flash that blinded the hunters. A low hum filled the air, growing louder and louder. The ground beneath them began to shake, and strange symbols glowed on the trees around the clearing. Ancient alien technology responding to the cube's power. The hunters staggered their weapons. Sparking uselessly, Lorena and Max moved quickly, working together like never before. Lorena used her strength and agility to disarm the nearest attackers, while Max used gadgets and quick thinking to confuse and trap the others. The fight was fierce but short. The hunters retreated, their threat broken for now, as silence fell. Over the forest, Max and Lorena stood side by side, breathing hard. Their bond had grown deeper in those moments of danger and trust. "You're stronger than you think," Lorena said softly, "not just because of the key, but because of who you are." Max smiled, a mischievous spark returning to his eyes. "And you're braver than any babysitter I've ever known." Together, they turned back toward the town, ready for whatever might come next. For Lorena, the night had changed forever. Babysitting was no longer just a job. It was a journey into the unexpected. And with Max by her side, she knew adventure would never be far away.